Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Dad Chats with Matt. Today is a very historical day today. We have our very first, not just because Elliot is here, but what Elliot represents. Today is our very first Granddad Chats with Matt. So you are officially the oldest person I've ever interviewed.
That's
So
lovely. Thank you. That feels great.
welcome. So Elliot here, thank you for being here. Do you want to give us a little quick rundown about you, your involvement in the natural products industry, those things like that?
Sure. I've been in this space now. I think this is since I am old,
Mm-hmm.
my 34th year.
Yep.
So a long time. And played a bunch of different roles. Spent most of my early career working for larger corporate, but the last decade plus really working in support of entrepreneurs. Those of you who are trying
Mm-hmm.
to fight the good fight.
So your company, TIG Collective.
TIG Brands, TIG
Yep.
Collective. So what we created there, and we started this. It really was initially to be a typical consultancy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then recognized that that wasn't what was needed. What was needed was something different. And it started at Stanford's D School as a conversation around accelerators and how the accelerator model in CPG was really just a copy exact from the
Yep.
model in tech. And the relationship we have with what we put in and on our bodies is very different from the relationship we have with the apps that we use or
Yep.
SaaS. And so we put a group together of entrepreneurs and did a human-centered design conversation and exploration in terms of what would that look like, what really were the needs. And it came down to kind of foundational few things. One is good advisory and strategic support. Two was education. Three was access, swings at the plate, just
Yep.
opportunity. And four was community, not being alone, having other entrepreneurs to work and collaborate with and so forth. And we really built a program. And then we also heard very clearly that there were things that they didn't want. They didn't want equity mandates, they didn't want
Yep.
time limit, and they didn't want it to be cohort based. So that's how we started to create TIG. And it's been like any other entrepreneurial journey, literally jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. We've been iterating and adjusting and changing, trying to react to what's
Yep.
happening in the marketplace.
Yep.
And that's it's been a over 10-year journey now in doing that. So
And it's been good. I mean, I've been part of TIG Collective. We've been part of TIG Brands, part of the group. The community that you've built there, I think, is really good. So it's one thing that you bring the advice and help, but equally as well, it's great just being able to touch out to other brands in similar stages and have those conversations.
Well, and selfishly, we get to learn too. I mean, you get to cross pollinate.
Yeah. So before you started down the entrepreneurial journey, you worked corporate. So from there, so it's sort of two halves of your life there, a little bit there, big hardcore corporate, and then into entrepreneurial.
Yeah, but I was a corporate pariah.
Right.
I worked within the walls of corporate, but I never fit in, and I didn't realize it as much as I do now with the benefit of hindsight. But I was everything in corporate didn't want. I was meddlesome.
Uh-huh.
I like to take things that were broken and repair them and build them in different ways. I like to experiment. I like change.
Yeah.
And corporate doesn't want any of that. They want status quo. They want assurity. They don't like risk, and they don't like meddlesome. And they've coined a new term around it now called intrapreneur.
Mhm.
And so that really was the kind of role that I played. And it was interesting because I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I graduated undergrad, went to grad school, got married, and then started climbing the ladder. And on paper had all the success you're supposed to have. Climbed the ladder, wound up in as an officer of a big company, and every successive step I took, I found myself less and less fulfilled because I wasn't getting to use that entrepreneurial kind of mindset. And I remember this so vividly. I was eating breakfast one day, putting on my tightening up my tie and everything that I don't do anymore. And Juliet, my wife, said to me, if you think you're faking it, you're not. I
Yeah.
know you're miserable. Why don't you just go quit and do something else? I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you kidding me? We have 2 kids in college, 1 in high school. You can't just
Yeah.
quit. We've grown into this lifestyle. She said, you can just quit.
Yeah.
I went in that day, sat at my desk for a few hours, and walked into the CEO's office and quit.
Wow. Yeah.
And started TIG, and it was interesting. I was paranoid. I was
Yeah.
absolutely terrified doing this. I mean, I walked away from a very, in my mind, secure,
Yeah.
good income and all of those kinds of things to start something with 2 kids in college and 1 in high school. And Juliet just went around like nothing ever
Right.
happened. I
Yeah.
kept saying, have some doubt, right? Have some doubt. So I'm not the only one doing this. But what I've learned over time is that really entrepreneurs aren't any more risk tolerant, but it's just a different viewpoint. It's a
Hmm.
different mindset. And when you are your own future, that's really the best way to take risk out of anything. And the difference between entrepreneurs and those who aren't is most people see the risk in taking action. Oh, I have this great idea. Oh, but I don't want to take the risk of building
Hmm.
a business or something. The entrepreneur sees it exactly the opposite way. I have this really great idea, but if I don't do it,
Yeah.
I'm always going to wonder what if, or I'm going to regret it if somebody else did it. The risk is in inaction. And that's the only
Hmm.
difference. Everything else, entrepreneurs are just as worried about making their mortgage payments and taking care
Yep.
of their kids and carving out the balance that they need and all of those kinds of things. It's no different, but it's that
Yeah.
one place,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Of
Well,
where
how
the
did
risk.
that? I mean, like, that's obviously, as you explained, is a big, big change in your life as a dad with your kids. How do you? I mean, obviously they're a bit older by then,
Mhm.
but how did they handle that change, or how did they see it? I mean, could they see like Juliet that you were miserable, or this is just what dad's
Well, I mean, they think I'm miserable anyways,
like?
which is partially true. But no, they were definitely like cheerleaders, and at that stage, ready to, encouraging me to do it.
Yeah.
And they were, hey, Dad, we'll sacrifice. We don't care.
Hmm.
If we have to move into a smaller house, if we have to have less stuff, we'd rather you do something that makes you happy and fulfilled, which was, wonderful to hear, but super,
Yeah.
made me feel very worried and guilt ridden. But I also think now in hindsight, and I say this, and I've said it to you, I think being an entrepreneur is one of the great life lessons a dad can give his kids. Showing that resilience, showing that willingness to put it all out on the line, to take risks and challenge on because you really believe in something deeply. Those are lessons that will, you know, serve your kids. And it's I saw a LinkedIn conversation the other day where some people were posting about how the guilt that they're struggling with, how much work is taking time away from their kids and
Hmm.
things. And that's real. And I always struggled with that in both sides of my career. And one day asked my kids, hey, did you ever feel, I always feel like I wasn't there enough. And they were like shocked by that
Really?
comment. They were like, are you kidding me? You were always there. So I think we add that narrative, but the lessons we're teaching them, as entrepreneurs about self-reliance and accountability and working towards something that really matters. That's, as a parent, that's the best kind of modeling we can do
Yeah.
for our kids,
Yeah.
is to show them, these are the things that really matter in life, not what your title is or what your pay stub says, or
Yeah.
any of those kinds
Yeah. I remember I felt incredibly proud when my middle daughter told me, Dad, what business do you think I'm going to start when I get older? Like,
of things.
that was just, oh, we just start businesses. It's what we do, sort of thing. I
Yep.
never had that or thought that was possible growing up. But for them, it's a very viable option that they're
Yeah.
considering versus going to a job or whatever.
And I think, that's also changed.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of a career path now. I do some work at one of the universities around this. When I was in school, I mean, we still had stone tablets, but there wasn't a curriculum for entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
There wasn't,
Yeah.
anything along. Now there's, whole aspects of business school just on
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And I think that, it's now a vocation, not just a oddity.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So now, how has your relationship changed we talked about the entrepreneurial side, but even just now having older kids, right?
Mhm.
Like you're working there in the corporate rat race. Now they're a bit older there. How has that all worked out when you look back at that relationship now versus what it was back then?
Yeah, my kids were always, from the time they were little to even today, they've always been very aware and very kind of immersed in what I did for a living,
Right.
right? When I worked, I used to bring them to the office all the time. A lot of
Mhm.
times on a Saturday or Sunday, I would go in and
Yep.
take them with me just so they knew what I did and saw what I did and understood,
Yep.
that part of it, because it was such a big component and was in my mind what pulled me away from them. So I wanted them to understand
Yeah.
why, and that stayed true even to this day. I mean, they're very aware. They all the brands that are part of TIG, they order from, they
Nice.
want, they
Yep.
know, there's a lot of sense of, I think, to a degree, pride and ownership in that too. So and I think they know how intertwined it is with
Yep.
my identity. So
And I mean, I know none of them have their own business, but did any of them get an entrepreneurial
it's
bug or
interesting. It's
side?
so funny. I thought they would, right?
Yep.
I really did. So because I didn't recognize this, but when I look at like my parents, my dad was the corporate one, and he
Hmm.
was same. He was always. I mean, he is an oddity in general, but he was probably more like me in corporate than just different enough and wanted to challenge him.
Yeah.
But the real entrepreneur in our family was my mom.
Right.
She was a crazy entrepreneur. She did all. I mean, when I was in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, she had this idea of all these kids were going to lunch with the same kind of snack packs and things like that, and everyone was going to the store. So she went right to the wholesalers
Right.
and manufacturers, and once a month, a semi would show up at our house with pallets and pallets of product,
Yep.
and she had pre-ordered it all with all the moms, and we'd spend 3 days. Basically, it was pre-Costco.
Right. Yeah.
Was what she did, and so she was. So I thought it would continue on. None of my kids yet
Yep.
have shown a desire to do that. I have one who's a vice principal, one's a second grade teacher, and one's a prosecutor.
Yep.
That may change
Yeah.
because it didn't happen, for me right away. But I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, that's
So.
interesting. And then now, right? So now we've moved to the last couple of years. You're the granddad of
Mhm.
two, soon to be three beautiful, healthy, hopefully grandkids. How are you finding that new stage as a dad?
Well, it's the best.
That's what everyone says, right? So
I mean,
you're
but it's the best for a lot of reasons. I mean, everyone says that it's cliche, but it's the best for I would say two primary reasons. One is you can just love unconditionally, and you get to not worry about the other aspects of parenthood that come
Mhm.
with it. Like when we were, parents to young kids, we were at that stage in life where we were worried about, making all of our payments and all the other stressors that
Mhm.
came with being adults and with young kids. As now with the wisdom of that, we don't have that same level of kind of in the trench concerns. The other joy is to watch your kids become moms and
Yeah,
dads.
yeah,
It's really amazing because they do it better than we ever did, and it's a lot of fun, and it's an interesting dynamic, and you have to learn. It's a different role too, because now you go from being, to some degree, as a parent, you go from being a boss to being a grandparent and a parent of an adult child to an advisor.
mm,
You can offer your opinion if asked.
yeah,
You can provide guidance and so forth, but they're not under any obligation to take it, and you have to learn to be cool with that, and
yeah.
you also have to learn to let them make their own mistakes and do things like that. So
When
yeah.
did that change happen in your kids? What or you to your kids?
um
Teenagers, 18, adulthood.
yeah, I would say it was an evolution. It wasn't like a
Hmm.
light switch, but I would say it was that when they went away to school
Right.
was the most significant. But I would say that me, it was once they had their driver's license and
Hmm.
had more independence, the role began to change and began to,
Yep.
to shift. And it's interesting because there's the other dynamic, because now, we were parents to adult children, grandkids, but we're also kids to elderly parents.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that role changes too, because it flips the other way where now you're their advisors. They're
Hmm.
calling you and asking you and needing your help and support and
Yeah.
guidance. So it's things shift, and and I don't know that you notice it until it happens,
Yeah.
and it just does.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of fun. It's
Nice.
weird, but it's
Yep.
kind of fun.
Yep.
So
And I was just thinking of all the different things you've done. So your wife Juliet also works with you in the business
yeah,
there as well. How does that dynamic sort of go working with your partner?
I'm a terrible boss. I mean, terrible for a lot of reasons. And so we tried to compartmentalize that separately where she's not working with me day to day directly and works with other members of our team. And it really was trying to match what she does. She's a nurturer. She's a caregiver.
Hmm.
That's her, superpower. She was a teacher, and so she does that in community and tries to help. Primarily right now, the advisors in our advisory collective make sure that they're connected and engaged and so
Yep.
forth. And so I can kind of let that be, but we do have to build boundaries. Like, okay, we talk about the business, but until we sit down for dinner, and then we turn it off, and then
Right.
we just don't talk about it. But she's pretty good about it. It's not her everything
Yeah.
like it is for me. So it's a little bit different. She's probably better able to take a step away from it than I am.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
And how do you find that change specifically? Right. That's one of the big changes when you work for someone else versus then when you start working for yourself
Hmm.
and building your own business. It's really hard to switch that off mentally and be, you talked about being present with your kids, but even mentally present. Did you notice that in that move out of corporate into sort of starting your own business and handling that?
Yeah, I mean, and things have gotten worse for all of us in the fact that work is really a 24
Yeah.
7 thing now. We're tied to it. It's global. We've got all of our electronic leashes and so forth. And when you own your own business, it can be completely consuming,
Yeah.
and you have to build boundaries. It's imperative not only for your family, but for you and the health of your business. I mean, the most important asset that any of us have as entrepreneurs in our business is ourselves, and we have to be able to present the best version of ourselves every day. And if we do everything that's so depletive and don't take care of us, then we actually are encumbering the business. And that's a really hard thing to be. It's kind of like a weird dichotomy where in order to be generous, you first have to be selfish,
Yeah. Yep.
and that's so boundaries are critical. And for me, I know I'm not perfect at it, but I'm pretty decent about it. Like, I get up really early in the morning. I will take a call or two, as
Hmm.
first thing in the morning, but then I step away from work for a while. I go
Yeah.
for a run, I relax, and then I come back and I work. And then at 9 o'clock at night, no matter what, so we'll have dinner, we'll do whatever. But at 9 o'clock at night, no matter what I have to do, I have a program that turns off my emails and I shut down my computer, and that's it. I'm
Yeah.
done. And that I have to do that. But it is hard. It is hard to build those.
Yeah.
And we talk about this work-life balance, and I really dislike the use of that
Mm.
phrase because it separates work from life. Work is a really important part of life. It's a big part of who I
Yep.
am. It's a big part of what I take pride and joy in. So I just like to replace it with balance. It is a component of who I am.
Yep.
It isn't who I am.
Yep.
Other components include being a husband and a dad and a traveler and things like that. So you just have to figure out how to make time for all those things and understand that sometimes those
Yep.
things don't perfectly line up. There's
Yep.
going to be seasons for it.
Yep.
So.
No, very true. I think it's the creating the boundaries and then being disciplined
Yeah,
about following
discipline's
them. Yeah.
discipline's an important part of entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
talked about enough, but
No,
it
it
is.
is. No. Okay. All right. It's time now. You've hopefully come along and brought us
A dad
a
joke.
dad joke. We'd
Well,
love to
I
hear it.
told you I went to my kids and I said, okay, listen, I have to come up with a dad joke. Think back to all the dad jokes you've heard from me. And so my kids immediately all responded, Dad, in the 30 plus years you've been a dad, you've never once told a
Funny.
no, well,
No.
funny for sure, but even remotely appropriate dad joke that is,
Yep.
worthy of public consumption. I disagreed. I came up with one that
Okay.
I remembered. It's a terrible joke,
Yeah,
but
they
it's
all
at
are.
least it's relatively appropriate. So, a carrot and a piece of celery. They're driving together in a car, and the car pulls out, and they get into a terrible accident. Fortunately, celery walks away with just scrapes and bruises, but carrot's pretty severely injured, and they rush carrot to the hospital. And celery's been sitting in the waiting room for hours and hours, just really, really worried. And finally, the doctor comes out, and celery says, "Please, doctor, can you tell me how carrot's doing?" And the doctor says, "Yep, I have good news and bad news. The good news is, looks like he's going to make it. The bad news is, he's going to be a vegetable the rest of his life."
Okay. Okay. Well, that's the okay. I can see where the theme here of the rest of them went. No, that's I
That's
like
the
that
only one that
Yes.
is
Yep.
even PG. So, yeah, yeah.
That's good. No, I
Yeah.
think
The
like that.
others
Yeah.
will absolutely offend some
Yep. Yep.
some constituencies.
Well,
so I
we're
should
just
probably
getting
stop
started
there.
here with the podcast, so it's
Yeah.
good that we sort
Yeah.
of don't offend too many people
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Now, this week as well, I was supposed to have Chuck come and do this, and he
I'm sorry
pulled
to hear
out.
that.
So
Yeah.
this is sort of essentially the fill-in, and it's been significantly better.
I've been his stand-in
Yeah.
before.
And
Yeah.
I'm very, very glad that
Yeah.
we did. So
Yeah.
thank you.
His jokes, I would say,
That's the tricky
probably
part.
just one long bleep.
Yes. We
So,
might just pretend we
yeah,
don't do that part.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ellie. I
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me, Matt. And as a dad to a dad, I get to be parental and say I am proud of you. I am proud of everything that you've accomplished in this business, and the culture you've created here, and the opportunity you've created for all the people that work here. And you should be proud of yourself. And I know your girls are too.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your part in it. You've been there from day one as well, so appreciate that. And yeah, thank you very much.
Welcome.